but if they do, we're starting people off from very young, and so you have these kind of races. So, so kind of a starting place for thinking about what to do in memory is what is possible to accomplish. And can you reduce the gap? Can you make older adults better than they usually are? Sure. Can you reduce the gap between young and old by doing something for the older adults that you don't do for the young people? Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can do that. Can you eliminate the gap? Sometimes. But will young people benefit from the same things? Yeah, almost always. Unless it's something that you think is, and there probably are a few examples of this, which we've touched on, unless you think it's something that is only going to affect older adults to begin with. Like if you think young people are always operating pretty close to capacity for memory, and one of the issues with older adults is that they're not operating close to capacity, so if you get them more motivated, then you might eliminate the gap doing that kind of thing. If, to the extent that age stereotyping is an issue in memory performance, and it is at least some, then old age stereotypes are not going to affect people in their 20s, so eliminating everybody's age stereotypes is only going to improve the memory of older adults. Anybody's actually explicitly tested it. So that's kind of the range of what's possible. So back a little bit to where we were before for the break. So the papers we've had today, I really like for several reasons, and I'm delighted to have something new and this conceptual that we could use for this talk about memory improvement. Both of them talk a lot about something that, for reasons that are completely unclear to me, psychologists seem to be really tuned into, and most other disciplines seem to find really surprising, and sometimes I've actually been in conversations with people in medicine and other health and human services disciplines where people almost like refuse to believe this. And this is the whole transfer of training issue. I think because of our roots like in behavioral learning and studying learning and white rats and college sophomores and other simple organisms that psychologists have always focused a lot on the exact kind of changes that you get in learning and then what happens, and have posed the question of whether learning generalizes, and have decades of experience, maybe close to a century of experience now, of things not generalizing. Whereas I think this is probably true in the popular imaginations. We tend to assume that if you teach people something, if you improve them on one kind of task, they'll carry that improvement over to other kinds of tasks. And one of the themes you see both in Lustig and Fernig and Green and Bavier for today is that mostly that doesn't happen. You have to find certain interventions, and/or you have to work really hard at generalization across tasks. Or if you teach people how to learn word lists really effectively, if you're lucky, you can always get a post-test result. Right? If you're lucky, even a couple of weeks later, you can bring them back in, and they still learn word lists really well. But then if you give them something else, like faces, they might not do as well. Or if you give them a different kind of learning altogether, it typically doesn't generalize. This has implications for all kinds of learning, including like things about health behaviors and so forth. And even if you think that changing health behavior is mostly about information, which is almost entirely wrong too, but lots of people believe it, and lots of programs are built on it. Teaching people about one kind of health is probably only going to affect their behavior at best in that one kind of health. The other thing that they both point out to varying degrees is that, and this does seem to be somewhat more of a problem with older adults than younger adults, is that maintaining the learning, even on the same task, seems to be more of an issue with older adults. There was one exchange at the colloquium where Jerry Davis and our dean asked the speaker about mnemonic strategies, and he said quite carefully that young adults tend to use mnemonic strategies more spontaneously than older adults. One of the things that's plagued the memory training literature with older adults is that you can teach older adults mnemonic strategies. They use them that day in the lab. You have them come back a week later. They don't use them unless you tell them to. So you have kind of both of these issues that permeated a lot of the literature. And a lot of what's out there in the field about improving your memory when you're older focuses on these kind of novel mnemonic strategies and advocate, one or two typically. And again, can you do it? Does it have a short-term effect? Sure. Will it generalize to other situations? Probably not. What do you have to do to get older adults to more spontaneously use these strategies when they need them? I'm not sure we know what the answer is to that. And then Lustig and Ferdig take this couple of decades of literature and actually go back. It seems to be Gus Craik Day. She also goes back to Craik's idea from some years ago about depth of processing. And so the particular strategy that they use, and it's one that I think probably most people in cognitive aging that think about trying to improve people's memory, older people's memories, would focus on as the best way to go, is this notion of deeper level processing, particularly on the meaning side of things. And so that rather than trying to do like a method of loci where you associate the things you're trying to remember with places in your house, or trying to create visual images that link together all the things you're trying to remember, or trying to do acronyms or something, that what you do is you try to take the new information and at the most meaningful level possible, think about, what does it mean for you, and how can you relate this new information to stuff that you already know in a way that will help you remember it later. And so the choice of strategy, kind of the global strategy choice, is in itself a good one. And then they do something that I've never seen anybody else do before. And it actually speaks to a kind of, within older people, example of what I was saying before about younger people benefiting more from things. If you look at interventions, the results of interventions using mnemonic strategies, typically what happens is that you greatly increase the inter-individual variation at post-test. And if you look at the results, what happens is some subset of your older adult class gets a lot better, and the other people stay the same, or maybe even get worse, because the strategies confuse them with using strategies. And so, and that